Hi guys, today I want to talk about breakout boards for PCB development. Now, when you start designing your own boards, it's very tempting to just start and design it from scratch and build it, only to find out later on that you've made a mistake and you have to do it all over again. And that can be a very costly mistake. So the best way to go about it is actually take all these individual components and turn them into breakout boards. Now this allows you to put them on the breakboard and test various permutations and see what works and what doesn't work before you actually start and designing your breakout board or your PCB, your final design. Now today I want to show you one of my earlier designs, the Rotary Pixel. So without any further ado, let's get started.
Like and subscribe.
One of my favorite input devices is a Rotary Encoder. So this is an example of a Born's 24-step Rotary Encoder. The only downside is they don't really fit in a breadboard. So I decided to create my own breakout board. Now I know there are many breakout boards available for these types of switches, but I wanted to create my own. And the reason being, I wanted it to fit on the breadboard, but I also wanted it to incorporate NeoPixels or WS1228Bs or clones thereof. And I wanted them to be in a ring around. Now, because it has 24 steps, I wanted 24 LEDs. Okay, so I came up with a design that looks something like this. So this allows you to put the rotary encoder on a board. It has separate NeoPixels, 24, so every click would correspond with one NeoPixel. And the pin layout is such that it is breadboard friendly. Now if we have a closer look, we can see at the top there is the VCC, D-in for the NeoPixels and ground, which is shared with the rotary encoder switches. The first one being the switch, and then the A and the B pin of the rotary encoder. Now on top of that, I also allowed some filter networks to give you hardware debouncing if you really wanted it, or you can just leave them on and do it in software. I will keep them on because it just makes your life a little bit easy in software. So what did it end up looking like? Well, got one here. So this is an example of my rotary switch with a solid aluminium knob. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's a very nice turn, and obviously it has a switch. So let me just demo this with a live demo. So here we have the rotary encoder, and let me just show you what it looks like in real life. If the demo gods allow me to show you this. And here you got an example. So in this sketch, I've just loaded 4 examples to show you what the general look and feel is. Used one of my own dev boards for this. If you are interested, there's a link below where you can purchase one. So in this case, I just have a demo where you can see if I rotate the knob, the cursor will follow. And yeah, you get a very nice effect. Now if I press the button, you can see another effect. It just fills up. And if you look at the NeoPixel, you can actually choose whatever color you want. Let's say pink, and it will just follow suit. Well, you can see it's a very nice effect. Now to show you how bright these pixels are, if I press it again, I get a warning light, and now we'll go to full brightness, and now it's very hard to see. You can't see it in the camera, but it's insanely bright. And if I go to the second mode and I switch it to, let's say, yellow, it almost looks like the ring is on fire. It's very beautiful. It's a very, very nice effect. Now, having shown you this, I also want to show you one of the problems I came across by designing this. And let me show you a schematic. When I designed these, let me just lower the brightness so I don't blind us. Let me just switch it off for now. I actually routed the pixels counterclockwise, as you can see. And well, you may say, well, who cares? But what I want to do is when I move the rotary encoder clockwise, I want it to go up in count. And when I move it counterclockwise, I want it to go down in count. So obviously it would be nice if the LEDs were actually numbered in suit, but they're not, they're counterclockwise. So that posed a problem. And I know you can fix it in software, but I actually wanted to have a more permanent solution, and I didn't want to design a new rotary encoder just to wire them the other way around. I mean, it's not really necessary. So let's have a look at the code, what I actually did. Let me just see, open up the Arduino IDE. So the first thing I did is I actually wrote my own Rotary Encoder software. Well, let me just see if I can actually upload this sketch while we talk about it. This may take a while. Like I said, this is a live demo, so things could go wrong. But the first thing I designed for the Rotary Encoder is a function I use a lot, and it could be useful for you as well. And that's where I can give it, so you can see it here, a preset range. So what this function does, it gives me a range from 0 to 23, because there's 24 pixels. And that means if I rotate clockwise, it starts from 0 and it will end at 23. And after that, it will just stop, won't go any higher. And if I rotate counterclockwise, it will go down to 0. And the first parameter will give me the start position, so it will start at 0. But it can also say it will start at 10. So this is an easy way in software to just give me a rotary encoder value without worrying about it or coding it with complicated if statements. I'll just tell it, give me the number 0 to 23, and that's it. And that's all good and nice, but that doesn't solve a problem with the fact that the ring is wrong. So now, I can see it's working. This knob will give me a number of 0 to 23, but if I rotate it, you can see the LED goes the wrong way. And it makes sense if you look at the schematic. Pixel 2 is on the left side, but I actually want pixel 21 to illuminate if I rotate counterclockwise. Now you can say, well, that's an easy fix. Just put all the values in an array, reverse them, and then Bob's your uncle. But I didn't want to use an array, and the reason is simple. In this case, I only have 24 LEDs, but imagine if you want 260. That means you've got 260 values in your array, which essentially becomes a lookup table. And the other problem is, you can only go to 255. If you want to go to 260, you have to put a 2 bytes per element in your array. So your array will become very big very quickly, will use a lot of memory. And the other downside is, for the first 255 LEDs, you waste a byte, because you only need 1 byte to go to 1 to 255, but you still need to put it in there because you actually exceed that number. So using a lookup table is not an ideal way of scaling, and it's just not a good way of doing it in general. So what I did, I created a little function here, which is, it's very simple, but it's so useful. It should actually have been incorporated in the NeoPixel library. And what it does is, the first parameter here is basically how many pixels are we using. Well, in this case, 24, pixels 0 to 23, all right? How are they wired? Are they wired clockwise? Well, this one is not wired clockwise, it's wired counterclockwise. So we say false here. And then we've got a parameter, where do you want to start? Which LED number do you want to represent to be your 0? And then new position will just be the value you input. So what this thing does is, you input a single number and it returns a single other number. So it's like a black box. So in this case, if I look at the diagram, if I want to light up the third LED, which is the value 2, I actually want it to be LED 22. So in my function, I input number 2 and I get 22 back. So let's see if it works. Let's press it. And now all I've done, I've set this option here to false because it's not counterclockwise wired. And now I'm just going to input the numbers 0 to 23 here. And now you can see it works. If I go to value 2, it's actually LED 22 that lights up. Now let me just put the knob back. And yeah, that's basically what we want. And that's all well and simple, but what if you use this in your project and you mount it in a different way? Let's say you mount it like this, and now you want the LED 18 to be 0. Now we can do that as well. And all we need to do is just give it a new start index. So if I want pin of LED 18 to be the start LED, and I wanted to move clockwise, all I do is say start index is 18. Counterclockwise wired, no, that's still false. And I'll give you an example. And now you can see it's working. I can just move it around, and if it hits 23, it stops and goes all the way back to 0. Now the number I input is still 0 at this point in time, and now it's 1, now it's 2. But the actual function will translate it into the right LED number. I'll give you another example. I can press again, and let me just reset this. And now it's pointing to the other side, but now we said counterclockwise is true. And now you can see it moves the other way around. So it doesn't really matter how you've wired your LEDs. With this function, you can correct the direction, and you can also set your own starting point, so you don't have to do complicated math. You can just say, well, LED 14 is now 0, and you can just address it as 0, and the function will take care of the rest. Now, if you want to use this function, let me show you how I've done it. I've put in 2 examples, a insanely complex example and a simple example. And believe it or not, they're the exact same functions, just written differently. So if I scroll down, you can see the top here. This is the function I'm using right now. And this looks insanely complicated, but it's actually not. It's actually just 4 algorithms. 1 algorithm for clockwise, 1 for counterclockwise, and then there's an algorithm for that allows you to determine the start index. And if you cross over, let's say if you start with LED 6, it goes to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then it starts with 0, 1. So this will take all of that into account. I won't really go into depth explaining this. Here's a simpler version of the algorithm. Makes more sense. However, they are, believe it or not, identical. So if I just go and re-upload and change my index to index 2, I'll prove it to you, and I'll upload, and this will take a few minutes, well, minutes, a few seconds, not that slow, but you will actually notice, if I haven't made any mistake in pasting my new function, that it's actually the exact same thing. So it's uploading now. You can see it going, and it's done. So now if I reset it, you can see it's still working. No difference, not slower or anything. It's the exact same function. So if you want to copy it, just freeze it and just copy and paste the code. Yeah, these are just 2 examples that do the exact same thing. So if you like this Rotary encoder and you want to use it in one of your own projects, just leave me, just send me a comment, and soon this will be available on my website and or a Tindy store. I haven't decided if I'm going to use a Tindy store, but if I will, it will be available there as well. So until next week, I wish you all the best, and I'll see you then.